Many thanks for your company. The Electoral Commission has 2 weeks to prove they've been implementing the Representation of People Amendment Act 2006, ROPAA Act 699. This act allows Ghanaians abroad to vote in national elections. An Accra High Court, presided over by Justice Anthony Yeboah on Wednesday, gave the order as part of an ongoing case brought by 5 Ghanaians living abroad who insist their rights are being violated by the non-implementation of the law. Justice Yeboah pointed out that so far, the Electoral Commission's major piece of evidence was a 2011 document, and there was nothing to indicate actual implementation. The Commission therefore has 2 weeks to provide recent proof of ROPAA implementation. Now, what does this act add to the electoral process? Dr. Ali Seidu is a political science lecturer and joins us via the phone with some thoughts on the matter. Good morning and thanks for your time, Doc.
Good morning for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
First, let me find out if you are familiar with this case.
Yeah, I remember this case came out strongly during I'm not sure whether it was the 2000 elections or so, that we should give our citizens who live abroad, outside the shores of this country, the right to vote, just as citizens who live in this country have the right to vote. But I remember there were a lot of technical issues, including the definition and then the restriction of Ghanaians who are outside the shores of this country, and also resources that would have enabled the Electoral Commission to be able to implement such a policy. So I knew it was formulated, but the implementation faced a lot of challenges. That was what I know about it.
All right. Doc, I'm talking about this case involving 5 Ghanaians living abroad who have taken the matter to court. Are you aware of that particular case?
No, please.
All right. But let's talk about ROPAA. What does this act add to our electoral process?
First of all, the whole concept of democracy is built on elections. That's the people's ability to elect and determine who governs them. And that also boils down on a very fundamental governance process that has to do with participation. So it is very important that as citizens of this country, you have the right to participate and determine who governs you and moving forward the way that person should govern. So it is a general basic right that people enjoy. But the issue is, if in the developed democracies, citizens who live outside the jurisdiction or the territorial boundary of the state are usually allowed to vote. In largely developing economies, we usually don't do that because of several reasons. People challenge that it is a right of every citizen of the state to be able to vote and determine the government that will govern you. But every right comes with responsibilities. If you look at some of these countries that allow citizens outside the country to vote, most of these citizens still pay taxes back to the state, even though they live outside the state. I'm not sure whether Ghanaian citizens outside of Ghana do the same, because that is a responsibility that comes with a right. Moving forward, one of the serious challenges that we faced when this law first came out was the issue of finance and logistics, because it was very difficult for the state to be able to provide for the Electoral Commission to be able to run elections in almost every country. Because if you are talking about participation and marginalization, those who are outside this country deem that they've been marginalized by not being allowed to vote in our elections. But can the Electoral Commission conduct elections in every country across the world outside Ghana? Because even if we mean test, and we say maybe we are going to pick 5 or 6 countries and then start with them, are we not disenfranchising other Ghanaians who are living in other countries outside the 5 that we are going to experiment with? So if we cannot pick and choose the countries that we're going to run because of the issue of disenfranchisement, then it means that we have to implement in every country where every Ghanaian citizen lives. But do we have missions in every country? If we do, are the missions prepared? Can the Electoral Commission live with them to be able to allow this law to take effect? Do we have so much confidence in the ministries and agencies that live outside the country? Because the politician determines and selects the figurehead of those missions, either as an ambassador or a high commissioner. What's the guarantee that the climate of opinion will not be manipulated to favor the government of the day? So we still face a whole lot of administrative and financial challenges to the implementation. But those who are raising those issues have rights. It's part of their right. But does that right connote the responsibilities that are due to them by the state? That is also another question.
Doc, now this act requires that Ghanaians living abroad who are 18 years and above get the opportunity to both register and vote. Now, prior to the 2016 general election, we know that the Electoral Commission required a certain amount of money to be able to carry out the activities. And we know it was such a difficult thing for government to provide the entire amount. Looking at what it will require, that is to implement this particular act, like you've mentioned. Even in some countries, we don't have missions there. Do you think we are ready as a country to implement this act?
Yeah, I'm not. The act itself is a very good thing, but the feasibility is another thing. Like you've mentioned, finance is very important. And as of last year, I even learned the amount of money that the Electoral Commission requested was not that amount of money that the government was able to give. And you also look at the statistics. Most of our elections are financed and supported by a lot of donor agencies and then our development partners. So if we are still not able to, as a state, provide resource the Electoral Commission to be able to conduct elections very well in this country, how are we able to do it outside the country? That's one thing. So the thing is that even if you look at last year and subsequent elections that we've had in this country, there have been a lot of challenges in terms of logistics, in terms of personnel, in terms of administrative. So if we are going to, it will be easy because people argue that we are going to depend on our missions in those countries to be able to do our missions. Most of them are not trained on electoral issues. The EC will have to do that. How are they going to do that? Even if they are trained, what's the guarantee that these processes will be free, fair, and transparent, and to not favor the government of the day who has appointed an ambassador or a high commissioner to that particular country? So I think moving forward, we need to tackle the issue of finance. We need to tackle the issue of administrative and competence, the training and all those things, which is a very big thing to do. So what we can do is that until we are able to put all these structures in place, it will still be a very difficult challenge that we'll face.
All right, Doc, now when this act was passed over a decade ago, there were a lot of expectations. What was your expectation of ROPAA by now, 2017, and has it been met at all?
My expectation was that at the time that this bill was being shaped, the expectation was that the state would be able to liaise with the Electoral Commission, provide it an extra budget to be able to maybe start piloting some of this particular act. So I know piloting still means that you are going to disenfranchise some people who are not in the countries that are being piloted. But that would have given us an opportunity to experiment with the policy and see the challenges that are associated with the policy, the setbacks, and maybe a little bit of financial estimation so that we are able to address the challenges that we encounter in the countries that we have experimented and then keep adding more countries as we move forward. So maybe by now we'll have been able to cover countries that we have so much Ghanaians living. And that also has to do with the fact that we need to know the number of Ghanaians who live in other countries. Some of them are officially registered. Majority of them are not registered. So that is also an added financial cost for Ghanaian missions abroad to be able to get the total list of people who are living there, who are registered with the mission, so that they are now given the opportunity to vote. But since we have not been able to experiment, or maybe openly we are not told we have been experimented with that policy, so we still don't know the associated challenges, the grievances, and then how to improve them. And once we are not able to do this, it gives us so much challenge to be able to make it universal in all countries that Ghana has missions abroad.
Right, thank you for your time this morning. Dr. Ali Dusaid was a political scientist speaking to us on this particular ROPAA case in court.